Today I'm going to talk about predicting mid and long-term skills needs in the UK and the implications for policy. I think this is an interesting area. We need to know what future skills are going to be needed, and we need to think about how we're going to deal with that. But it's not an easy area to work in. I've got a number of data sources for the ideas I'm going to present. The first one is, the first two are produced by the UK Commission for Employment and Skills. And they produced two reports, one on working futures 2012 to 2022, the second on the future of work, jobs and skills in 2030. I'm also briefly going to introduce to you LMI for All, which is also sponsored by UKCES and is an API allowing access to apps on future work demand, amongst other things. And fourthly, very briefly, to some work by the European EmployID project, which is looking at changing identities and continuing professional development for workers in public employment services. Now, first of all, coming to that working futures 2012 to 2022, I think it's a very useful quote. They say, all models are wrong, some are useful. So yes, when we're looking at future skills and the future of the economy, we are talking about modelling. And of course, those models never are going to be absolutely right. The question is, are those models useful? Now, working futures say, the thing about our model is it's comprehensive, it's based on evidence, and it's granular. It allows you to dig into things. Now, here's some of their findings. They predict the number of jobs are going to rise by 1.8 million in the UK over the next decade. They also predict the economy's output is set to expand by 20%. And of course, in the light of recent economic performance, that's a brave prediction to be making. They say there'll be additional 12.5 million job openings coming about from replacing workers in the labour force. And I think that point about replacement demand is very important. We think about new jobs being created, but actually a lot of the jobs being created will be from replacing existing workers who either move to a new job or who retire from the workforce. And of course, some industries have different age profiles than other industries, which means the replacement demand is much higher. Business services, they say, will be the driving sector of economic growth, adding 28% in output and more than 1.1 million jobs. And information technology will see the fastest jobs growth at 31%, or they say 280,000 jobs. Now, there's some points to make about that, of course, because information technology covers a very wide range of different occupations and places of employment. And there's some debate, I think, over whether or not we need to collect data around that sector at a more granular level than we do at present. One thing that almost all predictions show, and all the modelling shows, is that health and social work will become very, very important, especially with an ageing population. And that sector alone will add nearly 450,000 jobs. And actually, it's a sector where already there's a skills shortage. But interestingly, although I would contend it's a high-skilled sector, it's also an extremely low-paid sector, and that needs some thinking about. We need another 600,000 care workers, and I doubt you're going to get them with the present conditions of service and the present pay levels. More corporate managers. I'm a bit dubious to whether we really are going to have another 500,000 corporate managers. And remember, these figures need to be thought about and questioned. They're only based on modelling. And more professionals in science, technology, engineering and maths, known as English as STEM. And that area is predicted to grow by 350,000 jobs. And then, of course, business, public service, education and health professionals will account for another 820,000 net new jobs. Now, those areas, especially public service, education and health, would, I suggest, be extremely vulnerable to government policy. And present austerity policies are undoubtedly putting pressure on public service jobs. Now, all of the skills predictions talk about we need higher skills and more high-level skills. But remember, low intermediate skill levels are in overall decline. Those jobs still have to be replaced. So there'll still be a large number of job openings across the skills range, including in manufacturing industries. Don't write off manufacturing industries and skilled trades occupation. There's going to be big replacement demand in those areas. And there's some evidence that in the skilled trades and manufacturing, there's already skills shortages existing. And finally, from this report, we're likely to see continued improvements in gender balance, with large shares of new professional associate professional jobs going to female employees. And of course, female employees already dominate the expanding care sectors. Now, of course, there's limitations to all these figures, aren't there? First of all, it's impossible to validate every data series, and I've done some work on validating data in the labour market before. You can't do it. It's too time-consuming, it's too difficult, and it's difficult to include detailed information in some public domains. That's because the data could become disclosive. Where you've got relatively small samples collected of public data and collected on the condition that the data is confidential and shouldn't reveal where it comes from, it's very difficult to reveal that data because the sample size means it could become disclosive, and that's a continuing problem, especially as the ability to cross-correlate databases becomes easier. For instance, even mixing public data together with Facebook. As you link more data, there is a danger that that data becomes more and more disclosive, and that's but at the same time, of course, linked data is more powerful, so that is an ongoing issue. Now, how were these projections developed? Well, firstly, Cambridge Economics undertook multi-sectoral, multi-regional macroeconomic forecasting to create 75 different industry projections, and that's using the standard industrial classification system. And then Labour Force Survey from the UK Labour Force Quarterly Survey, that data is used to develop historical measures of occupational and qualification structure, how it changes over time for employment within those different industries. And those projections, the patterns, are based on the standard occupational classification system, which of course is difficult in European comparisons because it's different. The SOC classification is different from the UK than in other European countries. Now, the second future skills projection report, research undertaken by UKCES, is the future of work, jobs and skills in 2030. And of course, as you go further into the future becomes even more unpredictable, however you're modelling it. But they're asking what jobs will be in the greatest demand and how can we prepare for the future labour market. And as I say, you can't predict the future, but what you can do is detect the flow and identity of the different uncertainties. You look at what's uncertain and look at the flow and identity of those uncertain, and then you try and analyse trends. Now, based on the current trends, by 2030, UK workforce will be multi-generational, older, more international, female, technology will be pervasive, jobs more fluid, and the global labour market highly competitive. But even within that sort of current trend, there's lots of room for different factors to shape it. And they very usefully look at the trends shaping future UK jobs and skills under 5 different headings of society and the individual, technology and innovation, business and the economy, resources and the environment, law and politics. I'm not going to go into every factor here, but obviously technology, converging technologies, big data, digitalisation of production are having probably a disruptive effect. You've got demographic change, income uncertainty, desire for work-life balance, etc. And at a more higher level, you've got growing scarcity of resources. So they say there's 4 big trends shaping future UK jobs and skills: demographic change, changing work environments, new business ecosystems, and the digitalisation of production. And then they give different scenarios. I mean, that's a common approach in these longer term predictions, to use scenarios. I'm not going to show you all the scenarios, but here's the business as usual in 2030 scenario. With a volatile world economy, we've certainly got that, haven't we? Business flexibility, innovation, bringing only moderate growth. Ferocious competition for low-skilled roles, I'm not sure about that. Job security is important, but also work balance. I think we're certainly seeing that. And they say employer-led education and training. I mean, I think that's a contentious one as well. But that would mean, say, in education, more virtual learning and bite-sized apps. That's already happening. More mentoring, virtual mentoring, and I think that's an interesting one. In health and social care, self-diagnosis, that's already beginning to happen. In retail and logistics, say, more sophisticated customer engagement based on software, I guess. Now, why do you want to explore then potential disruptions to the scenarios? Well, because long-term processes of change are uncertain, we need to anticipate potential disruptions, and we need to move from reacting for the future, from reacting to preparing for the future. And once more, they use that same form of analysis to look at disruptions that radically change the future of work. For instance, artificial intelligence and robots, and we're seeing robots making strides forward, literally as well as metaphorically in the recent period. We might see reverse migration. We might, on a policy level, see EU fragmentation, a Grexit, a Brexit. We might also see a shortage of skills, say, in nursing arising in the UK due to UK immigration policy. And I'm speaking, there's a huge debate going on. We might see deglobalization, and I think that's a very real possibility. So all disruptions, some of which are happening now, some of which could happen and could radically change the future of work. I mean, 3 issues they put forward. Centres of excellence. I'm not sure if the UK finance is a centre of excellence. It's a centre of money, and that could well move to Asia. 0 hours contracts. What would that mean if that became the norm? And for those of you listening to this outside the UK, 0 hour contracts are a controversial labour market contract which says employers can each week employ you for as many hours as they want to, but you're not guaranteed any time at all, and that's called 0 hours. And of course, what happens with more artificial intelligence and robotics? What will that effect be on employment? So then they use that to produce a disruptive scenario for 2030, where technological innovation drives the automation of white-collar work and brings large-scale job losses. And of course, in that scenario, they say creativity, personal agility, and adaptability become even more fundamental. What we can probably say about 2030 is that technology will pervade every work environment, that we will get interconnectivity and collaboration. I'm especially interested in interconnectivity on the idea of data as a platform. I'm expecting that to start emerging in transport in the next 12 months, and I think that will produce big changes. Probably going to be increased individual responsibility, and resilience is vital. I think that goes without saying. And there's a big danger, I think, of a 2-tiered labour market. I think that's already emerging in the UK, where you've got a highly skilled minority with strong bargaining power, but low-skilled people with little or no bargaining power within the labour market. And what they don't say there, increasing pay differentials between those on high pay and those on lower pay. And then they go on and say, well, we can do things. We can take action over future skills. Interestingly, each of the actions they put a question mark at the end of it. I'll once more pick a couple out, I think. For individuals, the ability to jump across different specialist knowledge boundaries, I think, could be a critical one. Pretty obviously for education providers using technology to facilitate new modes and content provision. We're already seeing that with MOOCs. I don't think that's so controversial. Now, policy-making ones they put forward here are very controversial in my view, especially enabling employers to take greater control of the skills system. I'm not convinced that's a good move. What I would say in terms of action for future skills is that we actually need to build that resilience, and in that way we need to be looking at the skills needed in the future now, but particularly in the ability of people themselves to shape the new technologies, not to react to the new technologies, to shape the new technologies, both for economic purposes but critically for social purposes. The problem with giving employers greater control of the skills system is every survey shows employers are short-sighted. They're looking for the skills they need now, or the skills they think they need next year. They're not looking for the skills needed in 7 years, let alone 10 years, let alone 20 years, because those aren't in their immediate economic interest. So I'd argue that society needs to be shaping the education and skills system, and in turn we need to be providing individuals and skilled workers with the ability to shape the future technologies for the good of society as a whole. I'm also interested increasingly about how we can use data ourselves to help people both shape technologies, but also to help young people and older people in choosing future careers. I'm not so interested in big data. I'm interested in smart data, data which does something, fast data, data which is available quickly, not in 5 years after the survey's undertaken, and especially in data which is relevant and data you can do something about, which I'm calling actionable data. It might be big data, but I suspect often it's not. And the work we're doing, sponsored by UKCES, is providing open and linked data, unified databases based on publicly available data. In some cases, we're merging in not so publicly available data into a unified database and building an open API. It's called LMI for All, and you can access the LMI there. It's completely free and open, allowing people to build dashboards on top of that data and to make understandings. Now, who is that for? Well, it might be for young people looking for a university course or vocational training. It might be for someone wanting to change their job. It might be for educational planners. It might be for economic planning. But I would stress that data is only data. The key to it is making understandings. There's a quick screenshot of the LMI for All website as it is at the moment, or was a month ago. I'd urge you to go and have a look and see what you think, and we'd love your feedback. And here's a prototype dashboard built on top of it as part of the EmployID project, which is a beta prototype for employment advisors in the UK to help them providing advice. And so once more, I talked earlier about data as a service. I think we can use data in terms of helping to understand future skills, helping other people to understand. So not just the experts who make their reports, very good as those reports are, but we provide a wider understanding of the future of employment market through providing data, but through providing services to help people collectively explore that data, different groups of people, and make understandings of it. Well, thanks for listening to this short video. I'd love any feedback on it. I'm sure there are many people with their own ideas, and we'd like to hear from you. That's all for now. This is Graham Attwell from pontedusky.org. Many thanks to Artemis Travalu from Pontedusky, who both developed a lot of the slides and has helped in the editing and production of this video. Goodbye.